did you pick downtown LA like right away? You were like, okay, this is where we have to be?
Yeah, that was always the goal. We wanted to just be in a very diverse area, just like full of inspiration all around of us.
Right.
And, yeah.
It's not the traditional kind of studio lots of Hollywood or Culver City or whatever, just kind of like very, very different. And I guess it shows, you know, so you guys are producing content, which in LA is like, okay, like everybody does that, it's kind of the town. But you gotta have found like a very interesting voice, both in terms of like the kind of content you produce, but also how you distribute it, right? You strike me as a first outlet, even more so than you know, BuzzFeed, where I know you worked for previously. That went like really heavy on like Facebook Live, went really heavy on like making video for social media. And I think you exemplify something that's kind of very interesting, which is that intersection between tech and content, tech and media in general, which, you know, a lot of companies are at, like Facebook obviously is there, Snapchat obviously is there, but you guys are, is it fair to say you're more on the production, on the content kind of side? You think of yourself more as that than a channel per se, right?
Yeah.
So to finish this very long preamble, you know, my thing and why I really wanted to chat with you is, I think content is enormously important, you know, for companies in general, and particularly in startups, and I think that because you could be in a company with no funding, no employees, just kind of try to make something happen. You could even have no product, no technology, but if you have time, you can make content. And if you make good content, you can find an audience. You can have people discover you, find you, engage with you, and I think it's such a critical tool that almost every company could use correctly. Do you still feel like that's a true statement in 2016, or has that changed?
I think it's somewhat true, but I think it's on the decline. I think it's becoming very, very competitive. I mean, you have gigantic media companies that are, you know, fighting desperately for their impressions in the Facebook newsfeed, and some, you know, newspapers that have been around for hundreds of years that are on the decline, just due to Facebook algorithm changes. I think as someone just starting up, it's not necessarily going to get easier and easier to compete with all these massive organizations. It's just placement within the same feeds.
Right. It seems like it's harder. There's more people producing content, but you said also the platform are changing quite a bit. And now it feels like, I remember when I started this project, right, we're doing right here, I was like, maybe I don't need to worry about Snapchat, Instagram, and all these kind of newfangled channels for me. You know, it's like I'm lagging behind. And it turned out I do, you know, because I can't, you know, really get the word out efficiently enough through Facebook and Twitter. Like, people's feed are saturated. You don't get as many clicks, even if there aren't big algorithm changes. And so, what do you think is the answer? I mean, you guys seem to be putting a lot of focus again on kind of format, and you know, you also seem to be developing a very specific voice, and those things. Do you feel like that's kind of maybe a key right now?
I think it absolutely is. I think as most of our audience right now lives on Facebook, but that's not ideally where we want to always be distributing our content. But I think with a unique voice, with something authentic, you can carry that audience regardless of which platform you're on. Right. That, I think, is what really needs to be the focus.
Right, so let's focus on that authenticity, right? Because that's something that, you know, I get that advice a lot from like PR people. They say like, be authentic, you know, people will like your pitch, and you get that a lot. So what does that mean? That, you know, I've heard people describe it as like, just be true to yourself, like talk about something you're passionate about. Like, how do you think about kind of doing authentic content?
It's a really hard thing to define, because I think it's different for everybody. I think if I tell you how to be authentic, then you're not going to be. Right. But I think I think about it a lot, not in terms of like a scale or a spectrum, but rather as an on-off switch that starts off as on, and then the moment you make a bad decision, it turns off. And I think that's really the key, is like you have to find those moments where you know that, oh crap, I just did something that was inauthentic to my own voice. How do I avoid doing that again and again in the future? So
do you feel it's like that Supreme Court thing of like, you know it when you see it, you know, you either feel like it clicks for you or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, then you shouldn't bother publishing it?
I think so, yeah. Well, I don't know if I would argue that it's not worth publishing. I think there's no harm in just publishing lots and lots of stuff to try lots of different stuff out.
That's the upside of having like channels that are so saturated and so hard to get attention. You can experiment. Yeah, that makes sense. And so the authenticity is kind of interesting, and I guess it is very, very unique. But the other thing that seemed to be authentic in a way, and is that fit to the channel. It's developing something that feel like it's native to Instagram, or it's native to Snapchat, or it's native to Facebook, or native to Facebook Live, and that seems hard to me. I struggle with that quite a bit, because those channels are new. I'm kind of new to them too. Everybody kind of is still. And so how do you find that fit, right? The right kind of format, the right kind of guidelines, I guess, that make the community feel like this is idiosyncratic to that platform?
I think it's very much like building a software product. It's a lot of just iteration. It's a lot of starting off with what you feel is best, and then seeing how people respond to it, and then just trying it a little bit different the next time.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think, there's kind of an interesting bunch of experiments that are happening. How do you suggest people measure it? Is it just as simple as measuring like the likes, the engagement, like the metrics people give you, or do you feel like people have to go a little bit deeper?
I think it depends on what scale you're at and what you're looking for. I think a lot of times you know instinctually, just by parsing the comments, looking at the share counts and what people are writing when they share it, how people are responding to it and reacting to it. I think a lot of it you can just tell intuitively. Obviously, at a certain point, when you have to scale up and you have many content producers that are working for you, you have to put in place those systems and kind of help quantify those goals and methods of improvement.
Do you feel like there's a dichotomy at all in this new era? And again, in the context of a startup trying to push content and kind of get attention and eyeballs between kind of doing the right thing artistically or on some level it's not measured by metrics versus metrics? Or do you feel like they're kind of one and the same in this day and age?
I think the argument can be made for both. I think this is something that I think about a lot and just don't know the answer to. I don't know if there is one.
Because I've seen the argument made that like if you do something that's really unique and artistic, people will connect with that and they'll like it and share it. And then conversely, I've seen people just kind of go after the share count and find great ideas and great series and build great things on a marketing sense, at least if not more, just from kind of click hunting, so to speak, right? So it's funny, right? It's a bit of a duality.
I think every person entity needs to find where they fit, what that fine line is for them, and just find the right kind of meeting point for that.
Right. So that seems like, and you can maybe try to tackle it from one angle, and if that doesn't work for you, tackle it from the other angle. So metrics-wise, it feels like that's also, while we're on the subject, that's also a bit of a different topic. I get a question asked to me all the time of like, do I need to worry about likes or retweets? Do I need to worry about shares? Do I need to worry about subscribers? My bias personally is to always try to get subscribers, try to get a way to show more content to people, experiment in more different things. And usually it correlates. I think every time you get another magnitude of subscribers, it just makes it so much easier to have this initial sharing wave of your content. Do you feel like that's what you would also recommend people prioritize early on, or do you feel like it's a different recipe to success?
I personally look at shares more. I think shares are the primary way that content gets distributed nowadays, right? It's especially with these algorithmic feeds that Facebook has and Instagram have. Like, if people aren't sharing your stuff, there's a much lower chance that people are actually going to see it. And the stuff that gets shared heavily is introducing new people and offering them an opportunity to subscribe. So I think it leads back into the subscriptions.
Right.
But personally, I find sharing to be the more effective thing, because that's also, I think it's something that you can iterate on as well. Like, you can learn, all right, people shared this, and you can read what they wrote when they shared it. You can use all of that knowledge on your next content that you make.
It's true, and you're right, that algorithmic change, it also has this opposite effect where it's kind of devaluing subscription in a lot of ways, because even if you're a subscriber to, like, say, Super Deluxe on Facebook, it might not show up in your feed unless you start it and all these different things. Right. And even on stuff that, platforms that don't do a lot of algorithmic, like, say, Twitter, the platform just became so noisy that even if you're subscribed and you technically see all the posts in your feed, you might not actually kind of see it, right, with your eyeballs.
And even the experiments that Twitter is now doing with the, while you were away, or posts that you might like, a lot of that is just built on the social engagements that the people that you're following have performed on a certain tweet.
So is there like a trick to it, to kind of making content that's shareable? Like, is there like?
I think it depends. I think it's always different for whatever you're doing. A lot of it is just like if you can make something there where people watch it and they see a reflection of themselves, or they see a reflection of a relationship that they have with somebody else. I think that tends to be one of the key kind of things.
It's funny because in not so long ago in marketing, people would say like, have a clear call to action. It was CTAs all the time and clear buttons and blah, blah, blah. And it seems now in this new kind of content-driven world, all those kind of explicit calls to action, they almost detract people from actually like sharing your content or liking or engaging. And I've seen you guys do some interesting stuff with, for example, your live event where you like make people vote with a like button or different things. But those seems to be counterexamples to me rather than the norm, right? It seems like now people really need to connect with what you're doing. And it does seem like finding that authenticity and finding that reflection and evoking something in people in a very true sense is kind of that key to success. Is there anything else you think that people need to worry about? Are there still is there like an SEO equivalent, I guess, to kind of content in 2016 and sharing on platform? Are there more aspects than what
I think discussed? A lot of it has just been, a lot of focus on sharing, and for Facebook and Twitter and Instagram specifically. I do think and a little hope that's going to change too. I think content distribution is becoming very homogenized. I think it makes me very nervous to think that Facebook is going to continue owning the audiences and just going to keep growing the amount of attention that they own of our audience. I hope and pray that something's going to change where it starts becoming a little bit more diverse as well.
Right. It's funny because everybody I know in the kind of publishing world, in the very general sense, like media entertainment, they're worried about that. They talk about that all the time. But it seems like marketers, aren't there yet. They haven't realized that their audience is similarly locked in, and that they're, we're like 3 or 5 years, maybe less, from like having that moment of like doom and the realization that like, oh my gosh, my spend and all that is controlled by platforms that's like drastically changing feed rules, and that's going to be an interesting challenge, not just for like media publisher people who live and die with this today, but like all the companies and startups that kind of do marketing that may hit that that Facebook kind of wall problem very soon. So that's an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, what else? Do you have any kind of you've done a lot of things, not just for Deluxe, but also a lot of side projects. So is there like anything you would recommend people like think about or keep in mind as they're trying to do content for their projects?
Yeah. I think one thing that I'd love to see more of, and something that I've tried doing a lot of here at Deluxe, is just being a patron of the independent creators out there that you love. I think that's an easy way to authentically share something that you love that represents something similar to whatever it is you're doing professionally. And I think the fans of those independent creators really like seeing companies, startups, individuals be patrons of them and support them financially and support them as creators.
Makes complete sense. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.